Hello, everyone. Today we're talking with Chris Jensen, also known as the Legal Writing Coach, one of the world's leading legal writing coaches and experts known worldwide. A lot of people, when they find out that I'm an English teacher and I've got a doctorate degree in the field of education and years of experience, when they meet me, they say, "Can you help me with my grammar?" That's the first thing that they say. And as a matter of fact, I'm wearing Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Good,
Uh,
thanks, Josh.
I'm wearing a tie that a student gave me. And this, a long time ago when I was a professor at university. And this student always said, "I have problems with my grammar. I have problems with my grammar. I have problems with my grammar." Well, when you look at the grammar, it's not actually the grammar. They were very good. This was a student from China. The grammar was amazing, but there was problems with the usage, which again is that combination of the vocabulary and the punctuation, because the punctuation that she was using was not in it was following the rules, but it didn't work in expressing the meaning of the communication. And so I taught her about usage. And I'm excited today to talk to you as an expert in legal usage, to help us all with the thing that we think we have a problem with, which is grammar. But the fact is, we have a much bigger problem with, which is getting that correct usage. So I'm excited to have you here today, Chris. Tell me what you mean about usage. What is
You
usage?
know, that's a good question, Josh, because usage doesn't immediately mean anything to a lot of people. And you and I, and I first, and then you and I have struggled about which word to use. It means, another word could be mechanics, another word could be proofreading. None of them are perfect, but it's basically the part of the edit where you're checking for mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, you would call that proofreading, looking for grammar, punctuation, vocabulary mistakes, or even if it's not technically a mistake, it's not accurate.
Okay. And so, and you have this proofreading or usage as part of the four-step edit. Um,
That's right.
Remind us again the four steps, and then tell us where this sits, where this falls within the four steps.
Okay, so for those who have never heard of the four-step edit, the idea is to edit instead of haphazardly looking for every possible problem simultaneously, which is the way everybody does it. You try to edit in steps. Each step is discrete and you only look for that one thing. And so the way I teach it is you start with structure, which is the biggest potential edit, and then you move to style, and then usage or proofreading, which is number three, and then number four would be tone.
Okay,
And
so
so
first,
proofreading is part, a big takeaway is a lot of people think that proofreading is editing,
okay,
and it's only one step in editing.
because the overall structure needs to be correct, and it needs to have that logical flow. It needs to fit within the reader's imagination or in with the standards that you set. Then you have to look at, you said style. The style has to be in the clear and concise way. And I'm sure our viewers are excited to learn about the style workshop, because that's the biggest problem that people have complaints with. So you knock out the structure, knock out the style, then you clean it up with grammar, vocabulary, and punctuation. And then finally, you adjust for the tone. And then you have this beautiful thing in the four steps. That sounds like it takes a long time, Chris. Is it is there any way I could
Well,
do this faster?
this usually when I first teach the four-step edit, I preface it with a quick discussion about time management, where one of the biggest reasons why lawyers don't write better is because they don't manage their time better, and they leave insufficient time for the edit.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to solve that problem is to shift time from the first draft into the edit. And so that's something we talk about elsewhere, but the idea is to try to not write a perfect first draft, just get something onto paper that you can then edit, because that's when your best writing happens, in the edit, or never, because you run out of time. And
Because you
so
were
if you
drafting the whole
start,
time.
yeah, if you start giving yourself additional time for the edit, then you'll have more time to make it through the 4 steps. And the other answer to your question is, if you really just look for one type of edit, be it structure, be it style, be it usage, be it tone, then it's fast. And it's more effective because you're only looking for that one type of improvement, and so you see it more readily.
Okay.
And of course, it takes practice like anything else. The more you practice, I'm fast
Yeah.
because I have a lot of practice, and it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you'll get, the faster you'll get.
So it's just like structure, style, usage, tone, structure, style, usage, tone, structure, style, usage, tone. And so you get faster and faster. And the one thing that I like to tell people, and I remind myself of, is that nobody's going to see the first draft. As a matter of fact, they only see the edit. They only see what you put out there to them. And so what happens with a lot of people is they try to draft and edit at the same time. So I'm drafting, and then, oh, I see a mistake, and I got to think about it. And then I go back, oh, where was I again? And then, oh, I see another thing. Oh, I didn't like this. Then I go back to structure. And so a lot of people are trying to do these 4 steps at the same time. But what you're saying is get it out on paper, then do the edit. The edit will start with the structure, but typically you'll have a given structure, which I think in law is, important to consider. But then restructuring the sentences, the paragraphs, and so forth. Then you go to the tone. Then you get to the style, and then now you're ready for usage. Why can't I just rely on Microsoft or AI, a chat software, a bot, or any kind of Grammarly or one of these softwares? To what extent can I rely on this for the usage element as a proofreader?
I mean, that's a good question, because I would say that different forms of software that is out there and that is coming, more and more, becoming more and more available, will give you the biggest help with this step. It's very hard to find uh, software or any kind of AI that will help you with your structuring or with your style, but with your usage, yes, it's there. Most people know that it's there. It's either, there are different grammar tools. There are a lot right within your Microsoft Word program. There's a lot of usage help related to grammar, punctuation, vocabulary. And so, yes, use it. It's there. And you may want to even buy some, depending on how much help you think you need. But it's obviously just a starting point. It's not an ending point. You still need to think. A lot of these usage questions, number one, the, the software will miss it, or number two, they're they might spot it as a potential error, but it's not always an error, depending on if it's US English, UK English. Um, and so you still need to do the edit on your own, but I would start with uh, whatever programs are available to get, to get a head start,
Yeah,
and
and maybe save some of
and
your
then
time.
do your own personal edit. And one more thing I want to say is, and this is something we mentioned in the workshop, yes, use these tools, but take the time to customize the tools to edit the way you want the tool to edit for you. You
Okay.
can make different choices. Do I want an easy example is, do I want an Oxford comma or a serial comma or not? And you customize the program whichever way you decide you want to do it, or the firm does it. And then forevermore, the program edits for usage the way you want it to. So take that first step.
Okay, so when people take more at the beginning to actually plan and organize, they can end up saving themselves tens of thousands of hours later on with the tools, as long as the tools are used correctly, and they keep in mind that these tools don't help with everything. Of course, we'll talk about ChatGPT and its potential for structure and usage in supplemental training to our videos. But now when we're talking about human proofreading and editing, which is what we definitely need to do, you say that the goal of proofreading, good proofreading or usage, is to make it disappear. What do you mean by disappear?
Well, let me turn that around and ask you a question. Is it good or bad if the reader is noticing your grammar?
Probably bad, because they're noticing your mistakes.
Yeah, no reader of your writing ever, looks at the document and thinks to themselves, wow, this is beautiful grammar. And look at the punctuation, just perfect. You know, the reader doesn't notice usage unless there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. If it's perfect, it disappears. And then the golden rule comes into play, which is help the reader get the content quickly and easily. If they're ignoring your usage because it's perfect, they're just getting the content. And that's what they're focusing on.
Okay. So the idea is to help the reader get the content quickly and easily. And getting the content means that they're focused on the content, not whether this word is the correct exact word that you should use or make sense, or if there's a subject verb agreement problem. They will end up focusing on that and get distracted away from the content. I see
Yeah,
this a
I
lot on
mean,
Twitter and social media with people, like the former president and many other people. Once they'll make a grammar mistake, or they'll make some punctuation error, and this guy was basically confessing to crimes on Twitter, and the people were saying, "Oh, well, look at him make that wrong word mistake," and not even paying attention to the content of the tweets. And so you're saying that this is happening in legal writing all the time, because people say, get your grammar right. I can't even read this. And they don't even make the connection that maybe there's some really important content.
yeah, I mean, you brought up a few very interesting points. One point is that, at the very least, usage errors uh, highlight the fact that you're not professional, that you're not educated. People call into question your reliability, and these are the kinds of things that you don't want people thinking about you as a lawyer or as a law firm. These guys don't even know how to write. So that's the minimum that can happen, is you start to lose credibility. And potentially even worse than that is you muddle the meaning. A comma can change the meaning. It can create ambiguity, as we discussed many times, especially in contract drafting, where ambiguity leads potentially to litigation. And there are many cases that we talk about that have been litigated on a comma. And so that's even worse than looking unprofessional, is you create a meaning that you don't intend, or two potential meanings that the reader doesn't know which is the right one,
Okay.
meaning
Okay.
ambiguity.
Okay. So when we talk about commas, I'm sure if I asked you, is there a single most common usage error, you would say commas.
Uh, you know, Commas are a big one, but I would say that there's a bigger one than commas, and that is inconsistent usage. Meaning, you know, words or punctuation that can be done correctly in two ways, or two or more ways in English, and you choose one way, and then the next time in the same document you choose the other way. And the reason why I say this is the most common usage error is because I see it literally in every big document that I have ever edited. You know, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, but it's always there.
So it's just like what you mentioned with the AI, with the software helping you be consistent, but you have to teach it. Hey, I want to be consistent with the Oxford comma or whatever. You're saying that this is the biggest error, and okay, then how can you avoid inconsistent usage?
Well, I mean, you just mentioned one way that I have to be honest, I've never mentioned in class, but maybe I will from now on. You know, using software, any kind of software tool that you customize to edit for usage the way you want it to, that's one way to minimize this mistake. So that's a great tip that I'm going to actually start incorporating into my workshops. But another tip is what I call an edit sheet. And before I show you what I mean by an edit sheet, some people watching this will be, you know, they'll be working for a firm that has a style guide. And a style guide is like an edit sheet, and it's a misnomer. It's not really a style guide, it's a usage guide because it's basically telling everybody in the firm how the firm has decided to implement usage. You know, we in this firm
Yeah,
follow UK English. That's a usage question. You know, we use the Oxford comma. When we write
right.
a list, we use one, two, three instead of A, B, C. You know, these are usage
Yeah,
questions that a
square
style
bracket and
guide,
stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah, and that is the single best way for a law firm to improve their writing is to adopt a style guide, but most firms don't have one, which I find on the one hand, I find it amazing, but on the other hand, I know from experience why. It's because partners cannot agree on usage. You know, one partner has an opinion about whether you should underline in order to highlight. Another lawyer or another partner feels like bolding is the only way to highlight information. And of course, neither one is right or wrong, but they have their own quirk. And so the firm never adopts a style guide. And so for most people, a style guide doesn't exist to solve the problem, in which case you can use an edit sheet, or even if the firm has a style guide, it's usually quite limited. And so you can supplement the firm usage with your own. And I'm going to show you what I mean when I say an edit sheet. You know, this is a very easy tool to avoid the problem of inconsistent usage. So, in other words, every time you decide something that can be done correctly in more than one way, for example, email can be written this way, it can be written uh, hyphen mail, it can be capital E, you know, and so you just decide, I'm going to write it this way. And you record under E, and you decide I'm going to write percent as one word instead of two words, and you record, and then everywhere in the document you are consistent. You know, you get as you're writing, you say to yourself, "Oh, how am I writing percent? I don't remember." And then you look at the edit sheet and you remember, and then you're consistent. And so it's a very easy solution to this problem. And this is the very first thing I do when I edit is I start an edit sheet because, as I said, every document that I have ever edited has this problem, but it's easy to solve. And even more importantly, if two people or more are working on one document, like a due diligence report, definitely have an edit sheet. And many firms do just for due diligence reports because there are invariably multiple authors working on one document and they don't all follow the same usage.
Okay. And so what you're really giving us here in this tool, can you put the tool back on the screen? What you,
Okay.
yeah, what you're really trying to give us with this tool is a way for lawyers, associates, partners, everybody basically that's working on a document, on a collaborative document or a document that requires multiple authors and editors. This is a simple tool for them to actually create consistent usage. So basically, the general editor will say, oh, well, it seems that overall the percent sign has been used instead of the word percent, or whatever it is, AM with a big A and a big M, AM with an A dot, M dot, AM with a little AM. By the way, Chris, how do you do AM, PM? Do you do big A, big M? I like the big A and big M.
Do the big A and the big M, yeah,
With no dots?
with no nuts.
Okay, so look, you see, we have something in common, and I thought it was only mountain biking and loving our kids. But not only that, we both do AM, big AM, PM. So, if you're a person that's learning this and wanting to implement your edit sheet, you can think about how you do it and be consistent with yourself. Become consistent with yourself, as Plato says, know thyself. And then the second thing is be consistent with the firm, or with who? With who should be, if we have a multi-author document, who has the jurisdiction? Where's the governing law, Chris?
So there's one rule above the golden rule, which is the platinum rule, which is do whatever the partner says. You know,
Okay.
if if you're trying to implement one of my tips and the partner disagrees, go with the partner. And so
Gotcha.
in this case, follow the partner's usage. And it's a great question because, your number one job is to keep the partner happy. And one of the best ways to keep the partner happy is to pay attention to the partner's personal preferences and record them in the edit sheet. Because
Okay.
if you don't, the partner will have to edit the document to comply with his or her own preferences, and it drives them insane. And so you do it, and they don't have to edit because you're already doing it their way. And if you're working for more than one partner, keep this kind of edit sheet for each of them, because believe me, they do not all have the same preferences.
Okay, even if that is inconsistent with the style guide of the firm, correct?
Well, yeah, you would normally, I mean, that's actually an interesting question because it does happen quite often that the firm has a style guide, but people don't know that. I ask the question sometimes, and one person in the group nods and the other ones shake their head, and they find out for the first time that the firm actually has a style guide. And so even if the firm has a style guide, it doesn't mean that everybody is necessarily following it. In which
Right, right.
case, if your partner, if you work for, M&A, and your partner, your team does it differently than the firm style guide, I would say do it whichever way your partner says. And you might want to point out to the partner that there's a firm style guide. Much of the time it's just lack of awareness.
Yeah.
They're not intentionally breaking the rule from the style guide, but otherwise, if there is a conflict, I would always do what your partner says, your immediate partner.
So, what are the most common? Can you give us three or four of the most common errors that lawyers make? I mean, you've done this 25 years and you've or longer, and you've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of lawyers. What are the ones that we can quickly fix right now? Three or four.
Um, so I'm going to give you a few that represent something quite typical, and not only typical, but often Microsoft Word won't catch it. And I usually give sentences that are not easy, because if they're too easy, it's a waste of everybody's time because you would never make that mistake. And so, I'm not going to give you time like I would in a workshop. I'm just going to show you because we don't have the time. But in this case, the mistake is little used and small business. And so these are compound modifiers that are very often not picked up by Microsoft Word. And yet they're important because it's not a little used argument, it's a little used argument. It's not a small business owner, it's a small business owner. And so those two words are working together to modify what follows, and that's why it's called a compound modifier. And it
Okay,
has to be hyphenated.
okay, interesting. And I'm sure business owners that aren't so tall would appreciate that hyphen.
Yeah, exactly. For
Go ahead.
example, I mean, and so it's clearer. No, it's not only correct, but it's clearer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we need
Another,
to, that's why I think that's why when I teach people that we need to dispense of the word grammar in the sense of I need to fix my grammar. Because what you have here is not a grammar mistake. You have a basically a semantics issue about meaning, is that people could wrongly interpret the meaning because of the punctuation that was not used with the vocabulary. So you have a combination of vocabulary, grammar, and punctuation all working together to make meaning out of that sentence for the intended audience. And I think that that's why a lot of people also get confused, is that they think it's grammar when in fact this is a punctuation and vocabulary interpretation error rather than an actual grammar error.
yeah, it's a clarity issue.
Yeah. Okay.
And often it's a mix of grammar or let's say usage and style. It's grammatically correct and stylistically superior because it's clearer.
Great. Okay.
So,
Interesting example.
this is another great example of what we just said. In fact, this example and the next one are both good examples of not only being grammatically required but stylistically superior. So the answer to this question does not only cause controversy in China, but also in many other jurisdictions. And this mistake is one of the biggest ones I see. Even the US Supreme Court, I have examples from the US Supreme Court. So native speakers, not only non-native speakers, native speakers make this mistake a lot. In fact, almost all the mistakes I talk about are not unique to non-native English speakers. And in this case, the answer is not only in, but also in. We're talking about correlative conjunctions, especially dangerous, not only, but also. And what follows each of those conjunctions has to be the same part of speech, not only in, um, but also in. And again, grammatically correct, but stylistically superior because it helps the reader compare, which is exactly what a correlative conjunction is doing. Not only China, but also other jurisdictions. And if you compare the blue to the red, it's a much easier read. It's just in terms of clarity to the reader. And so that's the other reason to do it, not just to be grammatically correct, but to help the reader. It's another way to follow the golden rule.
Okay, great. What are
And
you going to
then
surprise us with next?
this one is a little bit similar to the last one, and this is a mistake that Microsoft Word won't catch. It's compared to the revision, it is a relatively big mistake. Fighting crime, fair hiring practices, and the protection of animals. Number one, it's unnecessarily difficult to understand. And number two, it sounds like you're fighting fair hiring practices. And so the meaning becomes convoluted. And if you look at the revision, the government has proposed laws aimed at fighting, protecting, promoting. And so every time you have a list, just like with a correlative conjunction, each item has to be the same part of speech. And that's grammatically required and stylistically superior because it helps the reader see, these are three parallel ideas because they're presented in a parallel construction or structure.
And this parallelism, this parallel construction that you're talking about, you can find this not only in English but in other languages and in rhetoric in general. I'm surprised that students aren't taught this in middle school, university. It's amazing to me how many lawyers I've come across that had never heard of the term parallelism or had understood the grammar behind this key feature of language. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. But it doesn't surprise me anymore because, lawyers haven't received any training in
Okay.
writing.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, uh, you know, and this is something quite far down the list, because it's not only, like you said, it's not only a grammatical rule, but in terms of rhetoric, in terms of persuasive writing, it's a very powerful technique, using this parallelism that, where would they learn it? They're not going to learn it in law school, and they're not going to learn it in high school, and they're definitely not going to be taught it by a partner. And so they're never going to learn it unless they just get lucky and, read a book about it, or maybe they get lucky and they have a partner that's really, um, really dedicated to writing and dedicating to teaching writing. But that happens very rarely.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you though, when if you were lucky enough to take your workshop or lucky enough to have that partner, they would also show you in parallelism there's two ways to go about it. So one way that you've done is by adding these different verbs, uh or in the sense of fighting,
Yeah.
protecting, and promoting. But in the first one you had the single one, fighting. Could we rewrite the sentence where we had a single verb that covered those things?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter how you do it. I mean, there's two ways to think about it. Each item has to follow naturally, grammatically from the lead in. That would be one way to, that would be one way to test whether it's parallel. So, for example, you could say the government has proposed laws aimed, or
Yeah,
okay,
we just
let's
changed
say
that word.
laws that fight crime, promote fair hiring, and protect animals. And so you take that lead in. The government has proposed laws that protect animals. Okay, it works. And
Yeah,
so
or you
each
could even say
item,
hire fairly, right? So, but the main thing is that you have the idea of the words being consistent and parallel. But what
yeah,
you've done is you've added new words to the sentence. What I'm asking you is that can we change that to where crime, the protect animals, and fair
yeah,
hiring practices all fit under a general umbrella term, like the
yeah, you
original
could
writer
you could make
tried to
it
do?
noun. So the blue is ing verb, ing verb, ing verb. The other one I gave you was infinitive verb, but you could also make it noun, noun, noun. Laws aimed at crime, you know, unfair hiring practices, and the protection of animals.
There you
Again,
go. Right. So you could say aimed at, and then as long as this sentence makes logical sense, then it all of the list items fit under this same verb. But what you're saying is the key is how the word form is expressed. The word form is really key in that parallelism, isn't it? Because you have to fight crime, to protect animals, and to promote fair hiring practice, or you have fighting, protecting, and promoting. But the main change that he did there, if you notice, besides making sure the meaning made sense and didn't say we wanted to fight the protection of animals, is that he changed the word form and the word ending of that. Excellent. Okay, so those are three big things that we often see. Wow. And you know what? Thanks for the grammar lesson in this, because I know that everybody watching is really thankful for these things, because now they
Josh,
can immediately apply.
let let me mention one other thing
Oh, great. We got one more.
that comes to mind. And again, this is why a usage edit is necessary, even if you're using software, because a lot of it is not necessarily required. It's not black and white, and so you need to think about it. Do I want to say, and you might actually repeat. You might break the golden rule, which is be as concise as possible. But if you break the golden rule for a reason, then it's fine. And you might, in order, rhetorical emphasis for persuasive effect, you might repeat the exact same first word in each item. So you could say the government has, implemented laws that fight crime, fight unfair hiring practices, and fight abusive animal practices. And so it's this repetition: fight, 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 and you're doing it for persuasive effect, to impress the reader with how important that word is. And but it's still parallel.
Okay, excellent. All right. Um, Now, is that the final example? Can I ask you one more question?
That's the last example that I have prepared. Yeah. So we'll get out
Excellent.
of this.
So I know that everybody's going to get a lot of practice in their self-study material, because that's the only way really to improve these things. So we're having this great discussion, and you're giving us some knowledge nuggets, some nuggets of wisdom. But beyond, but the trick is that we take these knowledge nuggets and then apply them both in our practice and in our professional development, which is why we do things different at Synergetics Education. Now, last question before I ask you to kind of give us the golden rule again. What if I run out of time before I can proofread the whole document? This is what happens to everybody. Oh, I got 5 minutes. Any
Yeah, yeah.
advice on when
So
I run out of time, what to do? You've been wonderful today, by the way. Thank you very much for your time. Now I don't have
thank you,
any
Josh.
time to proofread.
Um, this is why some people reject my proposed uh, order of steps, and they don't like to go structure, style, usage, tone. They want to go first usage. They want to make their first edit the proofread, because you cannot send out a document to either to the client or to the partner that has grammar, punctuation, vocabulary mistakes. So I understand that, and you'll have to decide on your own whether it makes sense to do it first, so you're sure if you run out of time, at least you did a deep usage edit. But otherwise, if you do your structure edit, you do your style edit, and now you're doing your usage edit, and because you haven't completely developed this new habit, and you're still not managing your time perfectly, you end up running out of time. At least to do a big edit, meaning the big items in the document have to be perfect, and it only takes 5 or 10 minutes. The cover page has to be perfect, and a lot of people have a story where they didn't edit the cover page, and the next day they come to work, and the second mistake they make is they look at the document again, and they realize that they misspelled the client's name, or they put the wrong date on the cover page. So that cannot happen. Edit the cover page, the first paragraph, the last paragraph, the headings, all of the really obvious parts of the document have to be perfect, and you can check them in 5 or 10 minutes. And so do that. If there's a mistake on page 75, paragraph 3, it's not the end of the world.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to say thanks for that, Chris, and thanks for your time. I hope our listeners and viewers have really learned something, because I have. It's a great discussion about grammar. What is the golden rule? Just to remind everybody again, help
Help the reader get the content quickly and easily.
quickly and easily. All right. Thank you for that. And that includes usage as well. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and look at our other videos in case this one's given out. And make sure to complete all the activities if you're watching this show. And remember to also do the other modules, which are going to help you in this series with, like Chris mentioned, the structure, the style, the usage, and the tone. And then you have all those 4 skills, and then I think you're ready to go. So thanks a lot for your time, Chris, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next one.
Yeah, we'll see you soon, Josh. Thanks.